Thank you, Elena, and I would like to say thank you to the organisers for inviting me here this morning to give this talk about digital. I suppose traditionally the e-government agenda has been driven by the concept of delivery of online services from a particularly systems view of the business. Customers have been viewed, I think, as recipients of those services, and they've been designed by public administrations around structures and processes and information assets very much in a waterfall type of programmatic approach. So I hope today very quickly to dispel some of that type of thinking in terms of where we're going with digital and give you some of my experiences. The word digital has started to replace the term e-government in several jurisdictions. And digital, probably at its most simple, can be explained as the interface with the citizen via a website. But in its more complex form, it is an interaction with the processes and the back office function and the whole business of government. And we've seen that happen across a different set of sectors in e-commerce, in retail, in banking, and obviously now we've seen the last 5 to 10 years the emergence of digital in government. This morning I hope to be able to talk to you a little bit about my background. I come from the north of Ireland, which is on the top left of this map of the British Isles, and it has 1.8 million resident citizens. Scotland in the top has 5.3 million citizens. Ireland to the bottom left has 4.7 million residents and citizens. Wales in the red has 3 million, and England is by far the largest piece of the island structure with 53 million people. And why do I say that? It's because I've been, from an experience perspective, I've been the CIO for Northern Ireland from 2003 to 2009. I was the Deputy Government CIO for the United Kingdom between 2009 and 2012. I took a quick move out into the private sector as a CTO with a large American IT company. And then I was lucky enough and privileged enough to be the first Irish government CIO in Dublin between 2013 and 2014. And I say that because what I'd like to do this morning very quickly is talk about digital from a perspective of all of those three types of countries and give you some examples of what's happened over the last 10 years. But I think the first thing I'd make a point of is that digital means different things to different people. From the CIO's perspective, the head of the technology profession, it largely looks at the technology interfaces and how they support the output. Gartner have suggested that 40% of CIOs view themselves as digital leaders, which in my view then means that 60% of digital leaders actually come from the business. And the CIO, in my experience, has had a major struggle with legacy information technology systems, with the competencies within that team that's been driven by technology that has grown up over the last 20 years. And now we've seen a move towards much more rapid technology insertion with agile processes that have been imbued and brought in by the digital fraternity in terms of digital coding. The business, on the other hand, see the value of the services that the citizen needs in a more efficient and effective organizational process, and we've seen those right the way through yesterday and today being explained by the various speakers. But we also need to concentrate on the digital literacy of the citizens and the customer base, and you'll see we've been moving now for the last 10 years into an environment where our citizens are now becoming much more familiar with eBay, with YouTube, with Netflix, with Google, with Uber, with Airbnb, and I can go on and list a whole series of things. But actually, it's the citizen that really makes the difference in terms of digital. Here I've just put up an app, and I'll deal with it as an example slightly later on in terms of the transport environment and the sheer scale and of some of the issues there. The first point I want to make is that digital is not about the technology base. Although the technology base is important, it's much more about the customer experience. Successful digital outcomes require the business. As I've said, 60%, if Gartner is to be believed, 60% of digital leaders are from the business, so therefore it requires business buy-in and vision. And I've been lucky enough to work in administrations where I've had significant leadership from the senior politicians and the senior officials in terms of business buy-in and vision. It needs a strategy and a plan. I'm not really too worried about whether that's an agile environment or whether it's a waterfall program environment, but it certainly needs business analysis and application development teams, development operations and infrastructure and security, just to name a few of the people who are involved. And you heard earlier today from Roderick Schroeder and Peter Kisser about the need for measurement, the need for communication and the need for collaboration, and it does become quite hard work whenever you see the complexity of what we're dealing with. So I'd like to do an example. This started about 10 years ago. It was Northern Ireland's civil service modernisation and digital transformation programme. And you'll see in the, I suppose, in the top, the citizen channels. On the left-hand side, new working methods. There was a new technology foundation to the bottom left, where networks and interactions in terms of contact centres were brought to play. And newly skilled people, very important, from a Centre for Applied Learning, and then a complete new working environment with new open plan offices. And this was called Changing for the Better, and it encompassed 20,000 civil servants moving into a new digital working environment. It was focused around the citizen environment and very much into what the citizen experienced, and developed an application interface for transactional services called NI Direct, Northern Ireland Direct. And here you can see just the normal metro view of the website. On the right-hand side, there's an opportunity there to do criminal record checks for individuals who are working with children, and that can be done, the application be done online as a basic check, and then forwarding details so that you can go into a police record. And then on the bottom right, the one I want to concentrate mainly today on is about the motoring environment, the vehicle environment, because it seems to crop up across all the jurisdictions. But I think it's also important to learn from what didn't work. This was really difficult and just did not work in Northern Ireland. We tried the idea that actually the call centres should all be consolidated under one short dial number called 101. And the difficulty there was that the scope of the overall change mechanism involved all of the departments. It involved all of their dial-in numbers. It was a complex scope that was far, far too wide, and it was a radical approach that was not accepted by the business. It had multiple stakeholders, and more importantly, it had a competitor. The police wanted to use 101 for a dial-in number for non-urgent telephone calls coming in from the public. So we spent the 6 months trying to convince people that the value of having a single short dial number was useful, and it basically didn't work. So I think we failed there to do the business analysis behind the scenes before we started to try it. If you look at I don't have that one there, but the actual numbers of vehicles that are on the roads in the United Kingdom, we did some analysis of all of the transactional services. And here, you probably can't see the number, but it's growing by about 1% a year. And by the end of this year, there'll be something like 31.7 million cars on the road in the United Kingdom. It's a staggering number, because when you try to actually do an online service with that sort of type of number, you run into things, for instance, like vehicle road tax. You run into the complexity of registration in terms of vehicle registration. We have, both in Ireland, where we have something like 1 million national car tests, vehicle tests every year, only about a quarter to a third of them are actually booked online. Whereas you see in the UK, with such a staggering number, the vehicle test complexity is significant in terms of getting that data back into a central database. And then to be able to link that into insurance databases. So all of the stuff you heard this morning around data complexity, around the the whole thing around the data model, the interfaces, and how you re-engineer those services to get a good experience was quite tricky in terms of the last 5 years, which has taken 5 years to get an online environment. And I want to just say my next point is that the technology isn't the issue here. It's the people and the processes behind the scene, and also the practices and habits that have been adopted by organizations in terms of their technology and their operating models. When you go into the DVLA, the Department for Vehicle and Licensing, we still get a reminder. This is called a V11 form. In the UK, they send these out to you once a year to say, or once every 6 months, depending upon how regularly you tax your vehicle, to say your taxation is due. This one I received last Wednesday. It's for my son's car, so I have taken the address out and I've taken the registration number out, but it gives you a 16-digit number that is effectively the tracking number, very similar to a credit card number that helps you through the system throughout there. You apply to tax your vehicle online, and you can see on the top right-hand corner there are a series of vehicle tax, MOT, and insurance operations that you can perform if you want to check things out before you start. I actually went in to see if the vehicle was taxed and when the tax was due to run out. So I check if the vehicle is taxed by going through that one, and here you can see the output that comes up on the online form. And this can be done by a mobile phone, or it can be done by a laptop or PC. And here you see that the vehicle was taxed. The tax runs out on the 1st of December this year, and the vehicle is MOT'd, so it's had a vehicle test as well. It's a fairly old vehicle, it's 2002. It's my son's car. It's got 140,000 miles on it, although it doesn't tell you here what the mileage is. And it just gives you a sense of when we're supposed to do the taxation. You then go back and you put the 16-digit number, reference number, into the form, online form. You then have to check the details again just to make sure it's the car you are taxing, and also how much you want to pay, whether it's 6 months or 12 months. You put your email address in or your mobile phone number, which is optional, and then you choose how you wish to pay, whether you want to pay by direct debit or whether you want to pay by a credit card. And a credit card involves a larger sum because of the cost of that, but direct debit is free. Then you've paid, and you get an application complete. This is one that came through on the PC that I was using, but you saw a mobile phone one earlier on. And basically, you can ask for an alert to be sent to you by SMS text message. So I then received this on my phone. Now, this is the whole rationale behind digital, is to make the transactional value and the ease of completion much quicker. And in the end, this is the most important thing of the whole thing, that actually you get to success. You actually get a feeling of empowerment because you've actually received the transaction. You don't really want to tax your car. It's not something you want to do. You have to pay the money. Everybody has to pay the money. But actually, if you can do it quickly and you can get there, then success is the main feature. So in summary, digital is about the customer experience. It's not about the technology. It is about transactional value and speed. And in order to get it right, you have to have business buy-in. I think you do need to know your customer, KYC. It's a banking term, but it's a know your customer. There has to be an appetite to change the processes. And in general, my experience has that it's not about an instant return on investment. It does take time to get to a successful outcome. And from that perspective, I hope I'm on time. I've actually 1 minute ahead. And thank you very much for listening to me this morning.